It's a big week for Jay-Z. His Rock Nation is geared up to produce the most watched live performance of the year, the Super Bowl halftime show. And of course, he was there to cheer on his wife, who took home the coveted award of Album of the Year at this year's Grammys. So in light of all of that, he's also making a surprising move in his ongoing back and forth with Tony Buzbee. Now at this point, we all know who the Texas-based attorney is.
For the longest time, there was this silent tension hanging over the entire industry, a cold fog that everyone felt but nobody dared to speak about. People acted like everything behind the scenes was glamorous.
Who intend to bring civil claims in civil court against Sean Diddy Combs, as well as claims against many other individuals and entities that we will name as defendants as we file these individual cases.
And of course, we know later that Jane Doe, who is being represented by the Texas attorney, filed a suit a couple weeks after this press conference accusing Diddy of raping her when she was just 13 years old. Then amended that complaint weeks later, adding Jay-Z, Sean Carter's name to that child rape lawsuit alongside Diddy. A female celebrity was also mentioned in that complaint as well. However, her identity has since remained a mystery. Since that happened, first, let me say both Sean Combs and Sean Carter have denied those accusations. Diddy's team said, quote, "In court, the truth will prevail, that Mr. Combs never sexually assaulted or trafficked anyone, man or woman, adult or minor." Meanwhile, Jay-Z made a scathing statement of denial, mainly targeting Tony Buzbee. He said in part, quote, "My lawyer received a blackmail attempt called a demand letter from a lawyer named Tony Buzbee. What he had calculated was the nature of these allegations and the public scrutiny would make me want to settle. No, sir, it had the opposite effect. It made me want to expose you for the fraud you are in a very public fashion. So no, I will not give you one red penny." Now that statement went on to call Tony Buzbee a deplorable human, a man with no valor, and an ambulance chaser in a cheap suit. Now, while Diddy sits in a jail cell awaiting trial, by the way, pleaded not guilty to those charges, denies all the accusations made in the various lawsuits, Jay-Z and Tony Buzbee have been going back and forth with lots of motions filed, complaints filed, and accusations flying on both ends. The Jane Doe alleging she was raped by Diddy and Jay-Z went on NBC, where they pointed out consistencies in her account of what happened, including that her father picked her up after the alleged rape. Her father later told NBC he didn't recall that. She claimed she spoke to a celebrity there, but that celeb wasn't even in New York at that time. And photos showed Diddy and Jay-Z at different locations than the Jane Doe described. Now, that interview happened in mid-December. By the end of that month, Jay-Z sued Buzbee for defamation and extortion. Jay-Z's legal team has also been pushing for the Jane Doe to not hide under anonymity. And of course, Jay-Z's lawyers have been trying to get his name off that child rape lawsuit or just have it dismissed altogether. Now, a judge ruled that she can proceed anonymously for now, but scolded Jay-Z's attorneys for their combative motions and inflammatory language used against Tony Buzbee. Then in January, a legal petition was filed by a Texas man who is represented by Tony Buzbee, who also accused Jay-Z's lawyers of bribing people to sue Buzbee and his law firm. So a lot's happened. Now, in a surprising move, Jay-Z's lawyer Alex Spiro is seemingly softening up on Buzbee. In a letter to Judge Annalisa Torres, the same one who previously scolded him, Spiro wrote, quote, "Dear Judge Torres, we write on behalf of defendant Sean Carter to respectfully request that Mr. Carter's motion for sanctions pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 11 be withdrawn at this time without prejudice. We have discussed this matter with counsel for plaintiff who consents to this submission and agrees the withdrawal is without prejudice." And that motion was terminated. So what does it mean? Well, last month, Jay-Z's lawyer asked the court to impose sanctions against Buzbee for allegedly failing to do a reasonable investigation before filing the rape allegations against him. Jay-Z's lawyer even pointed out that Buzbee admitted to not even meeting Jane Doe before he signed off on her complaint. But Buzbee maintains the case was appropriately vetted. So while the move from Jay-Z's lawyers was surprising, it might also be a part of their strategy. At this time, neither Jay-Z, his legal team, or Tony Buzbee have publicly responded to this surprising move. But it's likely not the end of this ongoing legal saga, and we could hear more very soon. Let's unpack this further with attorney and litigator Rich Schoenstein. Rich, always great to see you. What's your reaction to this move done by Jay-Z's lawyer Alex Spiro? Are you surprised that he asked the judge to drop the motion for sanctioning Tony Buzbee?
Well, I'm a little bit surprised because, asking for sanctions is a pretty aggressive move. And so to turn
Powerful, iconic, unstoppable. But behind that shine, behind the staged smiles and the myth of brotherhood, there was a storm boiling so violently that anybody who got too close ended up getting swallowed alive. And for years, one figure in particular kept that storm hidden. The second they walked into a room, everyone adjusted their posture, lowered their voice, and pretended not to notice the darkness everyone felt but nobody named. You could feel the fear in the air when conversations shifted. You could feel the hesitation when people tried to explain what went on. But now, Now the person everyone thought would never speak has finally shattered that wall of silence. And the second those words came out of his mouth, the entire industry froze. It wasn't just that he talked, it was what he talked about, how he talked about it, and how every sentence carried the weight of decades of secrets people worked hard to bury. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't dramatize anything, he didn't cry, he didn't shake, he just told the truth, calmly, clearly, like someone who had finally cut the chains that kept him quiet for way too long. And the moment that truth hit the light, everything people thought they knew about that
Around and withdraw that motion is a notable retreat from that move. So I wasn't expecting it, and the question is, why did they do it? And I would assume that's what we're going to talk about.
Definitely. And I, also want to ask, this letter said they want to withdraw it without prejudice. Why is that part important?
Well, without prejudice just means they could bring it again. So you can either withdraw a motion with prejudice, which means it's resolved and we can't bring it again, or without prejudice, which means the court doesn't have to deal with this now, but we're not waiving our rights. We're going to save the right to bring the motion again at a later time.
And, as you just mentioned before, I guess we're going to get into, why was this move even done in the first place? Now, Jay-Z's lawyer was previously scolded by that same judge for using inflammatory language against Tony Busby. But do you think that this is a part of a new strategy not to be harsh on the Jane Doe lawyer, instead hope to just get this suit dismissed instead?
Possibly. So that first thing you mentioned about the judge's reaction, I have three theories about why this was withdrawn. And the first one is exactly what you said. The judge has already indicated on the record that she's not thrilled with the way the attorneys are going at each other in this. And no judge is. No judge wants to make a case about conflict between the lawyers. Lawyers end up skirmishing all the time. They don't like each other all the time. They accuse each other of bad stuff all the time. And no judge wants the case to be about that. The judge wants the case to be about the merits, about the claims, about the parties, not about the lawyers. So she dressed down the lawyers at one point about this kind of activity, and it's possible that they have withdrawn the motion because they just don't think the judge is going to really consider it, given her predisposition. That's one possibility.
And what's your other possibility?
Well, I have two other possibilities, and there could be a mix of the three. The second possibility that occurred to me is, for some reason, the people who brought the motion, and that's the Quinn Emanuel firm, no longer think the motion is that strong. It's possible they've evaluated things. It's possible, they were claiming that the plaintiffs didn't vet the claims enough and made representations in the complaint that could not have been true. And maybe with further analysis, they've come to a view that the allegations in the complaint are not so demonstrably false that you could prevail on a motion for sanctions. Remember, a motion for sanctions is really hard to win on. I mean, they're very infrequently granted, especially in a contentious case like this. So I wouldn't have expected it to be granted anyway. So the second possibility is that Quinn Emanuel just decided it's not the best motion. It's not our best. We have a separate motion to dismiss the complaint against our client. That's the motion that we want to see through. That's the motion we want the judge to focus on. We want her to focus on the merits and dismiss the claims against our client. We don't care about this sanctions stuff. We're going to get it go. And my third theory, which I have no basis for other than sheer speculation, I want to say that up front, is that there's some kind of deal here between the lawyers. The lawyers have accused each other.
Powerful empire crumbled like dust. He described a world nobody wants to believe is real, a world where loyalty meant silence, where success meant obedience, where power meant control. He talked about nights where the atmosphere around him felt wrong, where something in his spirit told him he needed to get out, but he didn't know how. He talked about private rooms where the energy shifted the moment the door closed. He talked about situations where he felt trapped, watched, studied, expected to play along with whatever was happening even when it didn't sit right with him. And the craziest part? He wasn't emotional when he said it. He didn't rant. He didn't lash out. He spoke like someone who had been holding these memories under his skin for so long that finally releasing them felt like breathing for the first time. And the person he talked about? The one who built the empire everyone used to admire? The one people swore was untouchable? Yeah, that illusion shattered instantly, because according to him, the empire wasn't built on talent and grind. It wasn't built on mentorship and opportunity. It was built on
Other, right? Busby's accused Quinn Emanuel of going after his clients and trying to get them to bring malpractice cases. Quinn Emanuel's gone after Busby and accused him of trying to drum up clients to bring claims against Combs and against Jay-Z. And maybe the attorneys have reached some sort of understanding about the ground rules. Maybe not, but maybe they have, and letting this motion go is part of that understanding. That would be my third possible reason.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned that it's speculation, but I think by you kind of explaining that, I feel like that might also be very plausible. I want to go back to what you said during kind of your second explanation, where, I'm sure Jay-Z from his side, he probably wants this lawsuit just to be, or this complaint to be dismissed, or not even amended in the first place, made in the first place. Obviously, nothing goes away in the blink of an eye, excuse me. But in your opinion, watching all of this legal back and forth that's been unfolding these past few months, do you think there is enough to dismiss, or do you think at a point this will even get litigated?
I think it's going to get litigated. If I had to guess, I haven't really studied the complaint against the motion to dismiss, so I don't have a advanced opinion about it. But my reaction to it is that the complaint accuses him of some very bad stuff, and that ought to be enough to move the case forward. That's my guess. Now, remember, at the outset of these litigations, we go through kind of a honing phase where the dispute is sort of narrowed down to certain parties and certain claims. And sometimes the motion to dismiss doesn't get rid of the case entirely, but it gets rid of some of the claims or it gets rid of some of the parties. I see today, by way of example, there's a brand new filing dismissing defendant Bad Boy Records LLC. There were separate claims against that company, and I don't know where all these companies fit in the pantheon of Bad Boy Records, but that company has been dismissed voluntarily from the action. And you'll see that kind of thing at the beginning of civil litigation. The parties and the claims have to be sorted out, and then the case can proceed with discovery.
And we do want to mention to our viewers there that even though Bad Boy Records was dismissed off that complaint, Sean Carter and Sean Combs are both still named there. I also want to talk to you, Rich, about a point that Jay-Z's lawyer made previously, and that was that Tony Busby never even met with this Jane Doe, despite saying in that press conference back in October that his firm vetted all of the claims. What are your thoughts on that, given that Busby is standing behind Jane Doe and the allegations that she made?
Yeah, well, so Busby, or certainly somebody from Busby's office, should be meeting with these plaintiffs before bringing claims. I mean, you should always meet with your client before you go charging into court with a claim, but all the more so when they're salacious, provocative, inflammatory claims like the ones in this case. You do have an obligation to make sure there's a good faith basis for proceeding with the claims. You have to make sure there aren't any red flags that would indicate the claim is false or being concocted, just to extort the parties. You have to do some due diligence. And Busby runs a big firm, and he says he has 120 or
on manipulation, secrets, control, fear. It was built on making sure everyone stayed dependent, loyal, indebted, scared. He revealed that nothing inside that empire happened by accident. People weren't invited because they were talented. They were invited because they were useful. They were kept close because they were easy to influence. They were praised loudly in public but monitored quietly in private. Every success story that the world celebrated had a darker version behind the curtain. Every relationship people assumed was genuine was actually a transaction. Every moment of mentorship was carefully engineered to keep people trapped. He said there were nights when he felt like a guest inside a world designed to break him. Nights where the energy was so intense, so heavy, So wrong that he would leave feeling like he needed to wash the air off his skin. Nights where laughter felt forced, where smiles felt fake, where conversations weren't conversations at all but tests. Tests to see if he was loyal, tests to see if he would comply, tests to see how far he could be pushed. And
actually interviewed her. And they looked into this case. They looked into her claims. And here's what the filing says. NBC News journalists determined that a number of allegations were either false or highly doubtful. For example, paragraph 44 of the complaint claims that the party, again, this is the party where she claims she was assaulted, the party occurred at a large white residence with a gated U-shaped driveway that was approximately 20 minutes from the VMAs by car. But photographs show that after the VMAs, Mr. Carter attended a party at Lotus, a nightclub in New York. And by the way, there is a photo included here, provided by Alex Spiro, of Jay-Z at what appears to be a party with a lot of people. Later on in the memorandum, he writes, other photographs from that evening also show Mr. Combs with his then-girlfriend, the musician and actress Jennifer Lopez, at two different establishments, Lotus and Twirl, neither of which was a large residence with a U-shaped driveway. And there is another photo that is included. This time it's of the pair, Jennifer Lopez, Sean Combs, and there is a caption at the bottom that says that they are at a MTV Video Music Awards after party at Twirl on September 7th, 2000. But that is not the only alleged inconsistency. You see, Jane Doe has claimed in her complaint that she was able to escape this situation and run away to a nearby gas station, call her father to pick her up. Well, the filing says, paragraph 60 states that after the alleged assault, plaintiff's father drove to pick her up. But her father has no recollection of doing so, despite the fact that it would have been a 10-hour drive round trip to retrieve his 13-year-old daughter from a random gas station. And yeah, that was included in the NBC report. It was a big part of it because this accuser's father told NBC, quote, I feel like I would remember that and I don't. I have a lot going on, but I mean, that's something that would definitely stick in my mind. Now, Spiro continues in this filing saying paragraph 46 states that plaintiff spoke to celebrities at the alleged party, but when journalists pressed her as to which celebrity she spoke with, she named a person who was in Chicago that evening performing a concert. So Spiro explains a little bit more about this later on in the filing where he writes, plaintiff also claimed with certainty that she spoke with musician Benji Madden at the alleged party about his tattoo, The Last Supper. She supposedly remembers this interaction with clarity because she has a religious background, so it was something to talk about. But Mr. Madden was not even in the state of New York. His representative told NBC that he did not attend the VMAs and in fact was on tour in the Midwest with his band Good Charlotte. Then, Spiro writes, paragraph 40 states that plaintiff watched the VMAs on a Jumbotron. In fact, photographs from that evening show there was no Jumbotron, as New York City had denied MTV a permit. And included, also by Jay-Z's legal team, is a screenshot of what appears to be a video, so it's a still shot, from a YouTube video that is titled 2000 MTV VMAs Red Carpet. And it appears that someone is performing on an outdoor stage in New York, but from that pic, yeah, you don't see a Jumbotron. Then, Spiro continues, and the same paragraph says that plaintiff approached limousine drivers at the VMAs. And by the way, the allegation was there is that a limousine driver had taken her to this party. But, Spiro writes, video shows that the limousine area was cordoned off by police and inaccessible.
Behind every test was the same person, watching, analyzing, shaping him into something he never agreed to become. And when he finally realized he needed to leave, it wasn't because he had a sudden moment of clarity. It was because he woke up and realized he didn't even recognize himself anymore. He said he felt like he was living someone else's life. He felt like he was being molded into a version of himself that served someone else's power. He described moments where he questioned his own instincts, his own purpose, his own safety. He talked about walking into rooms where he felt outnumbered even when he wasn't. He talked about feeling like every step he took was being judged by someone with more control than anyone should ever have. But the craziest part came when he described the turning point, the moment everything shifted, the moment he realized that the person he'd trusted, the person the world worshipped as a visionary, wasn't guiding him. He was using him, not for growth, not for support, for leverage, influence, image. He said the entire empire relied on people like him staying quiet.
To fans. And included is another screenshot of that same video from YouTube of the exterior of the Radio City Music Hall where the VMAs was being held. And you see limousines outside with police appearing to be on each side, and there are barricades. Now, this accuser did concede to NBC that she has, quote, made some mistakes in her retelling of the story, but she stands by her account, saying you should always fight for what happened to you, you should always advocate for yourself and be a voice for yourself, you should never let what somebody else did ruin or run your life. I just hope I can give others the strength to come forward like I came forward. But obviously, Jay-Z and Spiro disagree, right? And they say in their memorandum, confronted with those glaring red flags, a competent and ethical attorney, again talking about Tony Buzbee, would have not only omitted the many erroneous allegations from the complaint, but also completed a thorough and careful vetting of the core assault allegation before affixing his or her signature to the complaint. Abiding by that ethical duty was especially important here, given the defamatory character of the assault allegation and the near certainty that the complaint would generate massive publicity in light of the identity of the defendant, inflicting irreparable reputational harm and forcing him to explain to his own children that he had been falsely accused of assaulting a child. And conducting a thorough inquiry is particularly critical, whereas here, the plaintiff has no corroborating witness for her account and claims that she did not tell a soul about the incident at any point in the last quarter century, including her father, who supposedly picked her up. Spiro continues that a reporter was able to undercut almost all of the events of plaintiff's narrative just 5 days after the FAC, the first amended complaint, was filed, only highlights the complete lack of investigation undertaken by her own attorneys. A simple call to her father, a review of publicly available video footage and photos from that night at and after the VMAs, or a review of publicly available property records would have quickly revealed the implausibility of her allegations. But Mr. Buzbee has all but admitted that he declined to undertake such a basic investigation. When confronted by NBC News journalists with the series of false allegations in the complaint, Mr. Buzbee sought to cover for his utter lack of diligence by claiming his client would undergo a polygraph examination, an offer he seems to have abandoned since making it weeks ago. And he passed the buck, stating that another unnamed firm had vetted the allegations and that the Buzbee law firm would, quote, continue to vet claims and collect corroborating data to the extent it exists. So yes, that is true, based on the NBC reporting. He said that. And Jay-Z argues that's not adequate. That is, quote, entirely improper, and that it was Buzbee's job to conduct a factual investigation before he signed and filed this complaint, not afterwards. And Jay-Z and Alex Spiro double down on this, and they make the argument that if you look at how Tony Buzbee has conducted himself since Combs was arrested and indicted, it shows that Tony Buzbee hasn't been doing his proper due diligence. Why do they say that? Because after that happened, after Sean Combs was arrested and indicted, they say that Buzbee apparently published a 1-800 hotline number for potential plaintiffs to sue Sean Combs for abuse. And they say just 2 weeks later, he holds this press conference where he claimed that more than 3,000 people had contacted him through the hotline, and that he claimed he was representing 120 plaintiffs who wanted to bring lawsuits against Sean Combs. That is true. He did hold that presser. We covered this on prior sidebars. But they argue, quote, that sequence alone strongly suggests that Mr. Buzbee's vetting of claims was grossly deficient. Even assuming Mr. Buzbee set up the hotline on the same day that Mr. Combs' indictment was unsealed, the sheer number of calls that Mr. Buzbee allegedly received within the 2 weeks between the unsealing and the October 1st press release indicates that Mr. Buzbee could not possibly have vetted every caller's allegation.
Staying grateful, staying loyal even when loyalty was killing them. And once he saw that, everything else became clear. Every uncomfortable moment, every strange encounter, every bizarre situation he had brushed off, it all clicked. And once he understood the truth, he knew he had to run. He talked about leaving like it was an escape, not a career decision. He said he left quietly, without a farewell, without confrontation, because deep down he knew that if he tried to walk away loudly, the empire would crush him, not physically, not violently, emotionally, socially, professionally. It was a system built to punish anyone who didn't fall in line. And once he left, he spent years trying to forget, trying to rebuild, trying to convince himself that the things he experienced weren't real. But trauma doesn't disappear just because you walk away from the source. And now that he's speaking, everything suddenly makes sense. All those rumors people whispered about but never confirmed. All those strange stories that
Allegations to the extent necessary to establish the veracity before signing up 120 of them as plaintiffs. But within weeks of his press conference and in an apparent rush to be the first attorney to get claims on file against Mr. Combs, Mr. Busby filed 15 lawsuits on behalf of individuals who contacted him via the hotline in this court alone. So the basic argument was that Busby didn't properly vet these claims, that he appears to not even spoken to the accuser's father, which would have been a simple thing to do. And when he started to see cracks in this case, he should have withdrawn the complaint. And they argue that he is not engaging in his ethical responsibilities. And they even go so far as to suggest that maybe that is why he has not obtained temporary admission to practice law in this court, the Southern District of New York, for this case. Because in the law, we call that pro hoc vice. That's where you're temporarily admitted to try a case in a jurisdiction that you're not otherwise admitted to. We talked about this previously on another episode of Sidebar because he was defending himself, Tony Busby, in a prior filing. And he was basically saying, look, I'm not trying to avoid being sanctioned. I'm not trying to avoid the court having authority over me to avoid being sanctioned. And he wrote, I am a member of the State Bar of New York and am admitted to the Eastern District of New York. I intend to apply for reciprocal admission to the Southern District. Again, that's where this case is being held. The fact that I have signed pleadings and letters filed in this court does not reflect any attempt by me to evade responsibility for anything. However, Jay-Z and his legal team, they write here in this filing that Busby, quote, has not even sought interim admission pro hoc vice while his application is pending, despite signing more filings over the ensuing weeks. Whether that reflects an improper effort to avoid the jurisdiction of this court or just a failure to act with anything approaching reasonable diligence, it reinforces the propriety of imposing sanctions here. So Spiro doubles down and tries to reassure the court that what Busby is accused of here, these Rule 11 violations he says that he has committed, that they are extreme, that this isn't levying, quote, irrelevant ad hominem attacks against Tony Busby. Now that is seemingly in reference to what I mentioned before, where the judge had chastised Alex Spiro for what he was saying about Tony Busby. They're saying it goes beyond this. This is not just personal ad hominem attacks or anything like this. And they even claim that Tony Busby is a repeat offender. So Alex Spiro writes, on October 14th, 2024, he, meaning Tony Busby, filed a different complaint on behalf of an anonymous John Doe against Mr. Combs that has also contained easily disprovable allegations. For example, that complaint asserted that John Doe had never been married, but CNN reported the contrary. He was married, and his marriage purportedly ended after the alleged assault. That is information that any attorney could obtain during an introductory meeting with his client by simply asking questions about his marital history or how the alleged assault impacted his life. The complaint also asserted that Doe was assaulted in 2006 in the Hamptons at Mr. Combs' white party. But again, CNN revealed that the white party was held in Saint-Tropez in 2006 and in the Hamptons in 2007, something Mr. Busby could have learned through a simple Google search. So let me just take a quick pause here to talk about this, because a counter-argument for Tony Busby to fight against this, I imagine, could be none of these inconsistencies in Jane Doe's account or John Doe's account make the story not true. With respect to Jane Doe, yeah, there may be details that are wrong, but isn't that natural? We're talking about something that happened 24 years ago. Well, now 25 years ago, but 24 years ago when she filed the complaint. And if the allegations are true,
leaked but never stuck. All those sudden career shifts, unexpected disappearances, abrupt changes in personality from people who once worked inside that empire. Suddenly the puzzle pieces fit. Suddenly the silence makes sense. Suddenly the industry is realizing that maybe the reason so many people never spoke was because they were terrified of what would happen if they did. And the empire, the one built on image and influence, it's trembling, because the person speaking isn't some outsider. He wasn't a rival. He wasn't an enemy. He was someone who was inside. Someone who saw everything. Someone who lived it. Someone who the empire never expected to walk away, let alone talk. And since he spoke, more people are whispering. More people are reconsidering their silence. More people are starting to realize that the truth is more powerful than the illusion they were forced to protect. What he revealed isn't just disturbing. It's career-ending. It's reputation-shattering. It's the kind of truth that rewrites history. And the craziest part? He didn't even share everything. You can hear it in his tone. You can hear it in his pauses. You can hear it in the weight behind his sentences. There is more. So much more. Stories he's not ready to share. Stories that would destroy people. Stories that would make even the most powerful figures in the industry panic. but the beginning was enough. The beginning was enough to shake the entire foundation of that empire. Enough to make people question everything they celebrated. Enough to expose the darkness that everyone suspected but nobody could confirm. And now the world is watching, waiting, listening, because once one person speaks, the silence is gone, the fear loses its power, the truth starts spreading, and the empire that once seemed untouchable starts cracking from the inside. And the person who thought he had complete control over everything and everyone? He's finally realizing that power built on fear doesn't last forever. Influence built on manipulation eventually collapses. And no matter how big the empire is, no matter how loud the image is, no matter how intimidating the reputation is, the truth always finds its way out. This is only the beginning. The industry isn't shocked because one person spoke. The industry is shocked because they know others will follow. And when they do, the entire world will finally understand what was hiding behind the curtain all along.